Hello, my name is Anthony Frangi. I'm a media consultant from Brisbane, Australia, and welcome to this presentation on the power of radio during natural disasters. For much of my career, I've been a broadcaster, a radio producer, a program manager, a trainer, and a general manager. I'm passionate about radio, and much of my work today is about sharing my knowledge with those in the industry today who can learn about the power and the influence that radio has, especially during natural disasters. So in this presentation, as part of World Radio Day, I'm going to guide you through, with the help of some slides, about how I see the power of radio working during natural disasters. So let's begin. We know that radio coverage during a natural disaster is first and foremost about human stories. And when you think about it, those in affected communities may in fact be reliant on radio for their source of information, especially when the situation is quite dire. They may be isolated for days, if not weeks, and radio is their means of communication. And the stories that they are able to hear and connect with are in fact very powerful for them, especially if it relates to someone very close, a member of their family or a friend, or just the community in general, where they've grown up, where they live, and where they share people and experiences on a day-to-day basis. So the storytelling component of radio plays a very big role, especially during the natural disaster period. We should never take for granted that people know what to do in times of natural disaster. Sure, there are messages throughout the year, especially before the wet season, if there is one in a particular region. There are always warnings about earthquakes or tsunamis that may affect an area. But you must remember too that some regions could go by for years without a natural disaster affecting them. And people forget, we're all human. And so when disaster strikes, we as broadcasters should never assume, because we're well trained, that other people know exactly what to do. So they turn to us. They rely on us for support, for information, so that they can make a valued decision about what to do, not only for themselves, but also for their family. And so as broadcasters, when we're planning and preparing for the coverage of natural disasters, that's the first thing we need to take into account is what do we need to tell them, sometimes hour by hour, sometimes minute by minute, depending on the circumstances, and who do we need to bring into the fold so that the information is extremely accurate. So that's the next point that I wanted to share with you. When people react to a warning, most of them, that includes myself, we do it in stages. First of all, we hear the message. We hear it from someone. We may even hear it from the radio itself about a particular disaster that is unfolding as we speak. And once that message is heard, then we try to understand it. We try to make sense of it. Where's it coming from? Is it affecting my area? Am I at risk? Is my family at risk? What should I be doing now? So we immediately sort of go into that kind of mode of trying to piece it together so that the next step is an important one for everyone's safety. And then finally, it's about believing that it's real. Yes, we've heard it. We've tried to understand it, but then it finally sinks in. My goodness, this is real. There is something quite serious happening in my region, and I need to know about it, and I do need to be prepared. So as broadcasters, if we can understand the psyche or how people behave in a certain way, then our messages then are able to be conveyed in a particular way that people feel comfortable and understand without any sense of fear. Most people will find a way to confirm what they are hearing. So the point about hearing and understanding and then making some sense of it. So what a lot of us will want to do is we'll want to try and observe it for ourselves. So for example, if there's a huge thunderstorm that's brewing and rolling into our region, we want to go outside and see it for ourselves. If there is a typhoon or a cyclone on its way, we'll want to see if the sky is in fact changing and whether it's heading in the direction that we've been told. So we want to try and observe it when we can. In some cases we can't, like for example an earthquake. We can't really observe that it's on its way, it simply just happens. A lot of people will then want to try and talk to others about it, and that's very important. They'll want to ring friends, they'll want to text or message via social media. They'll want others to know that the situation is serious and they may be in the midst of it all. And at the same time, they'll want to make sure that everyone else is safe. So it's about letting other people know. And then they'll try to source other media. So while, if they can, it's not just the medium that they're familiar with, but they'll want to go looking elsewhere, and I guess the technology allows that today. So as radio stations who are primary in a particular region, we need to understand that people do have the option of going elsewhere, but we certainly don't want them to do that. And so sourcing other media is, in a way, it's kind of reaffirming that this is real and that no one is trying to be any different to the serious nature of it at this point in time. So how do people use radio during a natural disaster? There are a couple of ways. First of all, it's about contacting and staying in touch with family and friends. It's about locals providing updates on road closures and power outages and food drops and medicines and all of those essential day-to-day changes that might happen in our region as a result of the disaster itself. And that's really important from a grassroots or from a ground zero point of view, because we in the local area understand the situation, we understand the geographics, we understand the very nature of our town, so we're able to talk and speak like a local. It's also about the sharing of content. I think that's an important thing today, is that radio is not just a one-way thing anymore. It's about, it's two-way. It's about sharing, what they hear, what they see on, whether it's a radio app or whether it's via social media, they'll want to send that. So it's not just what comes through the speakers, it's about what's also delivered. And people use radio during a natural disaster to source information from emergency services. They want to know what the agencies are telling us, what the government is doing about it, and also, I guess, how the media is in fact maintaining a sense of authority in a way that, or I guess accountability is what I'm trying to say, so that the agencies and government agencies in particular are doing their job properly. Media consumer expectations, as media consumers, we want information to be as detailed as possible. So when we're listening to the radio, for example, we want to know that everything that is being shared is in fact accurate and truthful. We don't want any sense of panic, and we're not looking for possibilities. We simply want the facts, because what we're hearing could in fact be an important decision maker in what we do next. So as broadcasters, we need to be very important about that. We also want the information to be as local as possible, because then we can trust, for example, our local presenters, because we listen to them every day. So they play an important role in the coverage of natural disasters. We want to know as much information as possible, like where to get sandbags and fresh water and where the shelters are and all that sort of nature. And also to know as much as possible about what's going on, but not at the risk of a reporter's safety. And I think that's very important. While the reporters want to go out and cover all of this, as media consumers, we don't want to put them at risk. We don't want to see them in trouble or risking their own lives. And I think that's an important message for all media organisations, is, look after not only your reporters, but also the consumers are wanting to make sure that their favourite reporters and newsreaders and staff are being looked after as well. I mentioned earlier about the sharing of information, and broadcast media is no longer about transmission, where it goes up a tower and then is transmitted. It's more about the sharing of information, and this is where social media comes in today. So while we're broadcasting essential information, and it could be simply rescue or recovery, we want to make sure that other information is also available for us to share, and that is via Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatever platforms you decide to use that are useful in and popular in your region. So we just can't rely on a tower or a transmission tower or the radio in its traditional format. We have to make sure that the two are working in tandem, and that's important too. So when you have your broadcasters, you've got those people in online and social media doing exactly the same thing for those digital platforms. And radio and social media during a crisis, just picking up on that, really do work in tandem. And there's a real sense that they want to talk to others about what is happening, and social media helps them do that. So as broadcasters, if we can provide essential information that's regular and it's updated and it's accurate and it's sourced from, not only from local people on the ground, then you'll find that people will follow you and they'll want to share it, and they'll want to be almost a champion of what you're doing. And so radio and social media can really be a powerful combination during natural disasters, because they want others to know what's happening to them. Flood situations, I'm okay, look at my town, look what's happening, look what's underwater. It's hard to believe this is a 1 in 100 storm or situation. It's never happened before in our town. People naturally want to tell their stories, and they can do that through radio and through social media in partnership. So when we're reporting on natural disasters, there's a couple of things that we as reporters are trained about. That is, where the disaster has occurred, how serious the disaster is, or in the case of a typhoon or a cyclone or a flood, when will it arrive? Some situations you can't predict that, but at least we can gauge a sense of how serious it is. And then we need to sort of look at, well, how's it going to affect our community? How high is the water going to rise? How strong or powerful is this storm? And then what needs to be done to ensure their safety? In other words, what can we do to help prepare the community to be safe? And that's an important role that radio plays. I mentioned earlier that social media has taught radio a lot, especially about how to communicate differently, and I think that's really important, because and let's go to the next slide, traditional media has always been about me. It's about me as a broadcaster delivering information to you. But social media, it's about you. It's about you sharing information with us. Hey, here's the latest picture. Here's a story. Look what I found. So we are now opening our channels and our way of communicating with people. I guess in radio it was always about talkback. Give us a call, tell us what you are seeing or hearing. Where social media has opened up that much and far greater, and that can be very, very powerful for anyone in radio. So let's look at developing a strategy for radio before, during and after a natural disaster. One of the great things you could do is create a template where you can set up well before an event a template that radio program makers can follow. You can conduct regular training sessions, and I think that's really important about what your staff should be doing, how to look after themselves, not only from a program point of view, but how everyone can work together. Create an on-air campaign all year round. Let people know that you are the source to go to, not just during an event, but all year round, so that people will come to you during those times. It's important to develop partnerships with the agencies, the emergency agencies, so that they know that you are a point of call, that you are serious about what you're doing. Have a backup plan. What happens if the transmission goes down, if the power goes out, if the lines go down, if the internet goes down? What's your backup plan? Where can you go and what can you do? Always have your software as a backup, not only on your computer, but on something substantial like a USB or a hard drive, so that you can have that and take that with you. The cloud is a great opportunity where you can source that really from anywhere. And check links posted are still active. So, while you're posting, always make sure that people can access it really, really easily. During a natural disaster, make sure you assign people on a roster and they stick to it. Even if they scream and demand that they want to stay and work 24 hours, you can't, because people get exhausted and we need to look after our staff. So you need to be quite stern about that. be in a position to monitor other sources, what people are saying, where it's coming from, how accurate is it, are you missing anything? Appoint someone to keep an eye on comments that's being posted for accuracy, fake news, someone is posting something that is likely to scare the community but it's not true. Make sure you use hashtags, because that's really, really important, because people then are able to follow and find you. Make sure you incorporate Facebook Live where you can. Like, it could just be filming in the studio when you're reading an update, a warning, and then you can post that immediately on Facebook. That's a really simple thing to do. There's no editing involved. And make sure you refer listeners, remind people that they can not only listen to you on the frequency of the AM or FM transmitter, but also via your app and via your website. Every radio station should now have an app you can press, and it takes you to somewhere where you can listen to. And then after a natural disaster, make sure that you go into recovery mode, so that you are continuing to support the community, reporting on the damage, the rebuilding process, where shelters are, food drops, what the government's doing, all of those things, so the community doesn't feel forgotten. And that's an important point as well. And make sure you promote your ongoing commitment. Anniversaries are really important, 6 months on, 12 months on, especially if it's quite dire and people or lives have been lost. You want to commemorate those in a way that is sensitive and is reflective of the community. So as radio stations, you can be very much part of that, not just during times of natural disaster. So I hope that's been really helpful in giving you just a snapshot of the power of radio during natural disasters, and continues to be relevant even today in 2019, when there's so much technology that can allow us to tap in, but that one-on-one connection that radio has will never disappear. I hope that you enjoyed the presentation, and happy World Radio Day 2019.